Quick disclaimer, I know I'm gonna shit on this video a lot, but I do not condone you sending any hate to the creator. Sure, his takes might be super fucking moronic, but that does not warrant him getting a lot of hate. This isn't the kind of content I usually make, but to be honest, it's pretty fun to make. I'm currently working on a different video and have been for a long time, and I am reworking the script for like, what, fourth or fifth time I think? So while I'm struggling with that video, you can have this one instead, and then I'll release the other one. Now with all that out of the way, let's get into the video. In today's video, we'll look at a man who complains about how poorly a game he hasn't played is designed. He's seen few screenshots and heard few very vague descriptions of the game, and decided to make a 23-minute yapping session that is just really a big nothing burger. Like, I've watched this multiple times, and every single time the video will just vaporize out of my memory because it is just a nothing burger, as I just said. I know the video that I'm talking about is around 2 months old now, but I just realized now that you can actually show Deadlock footage and talk about the game without Valve being mad at you.
We're going to be calling a game bad before it has even been publicly announced. That's right, everyone, we're sinking to new lows every day here on the Downward Diary. So I'm just letting you know right off the bat that this opinion is already going to piss off a lot of people. And I don't usually do topical hot take videos like this. I have a feeling that most YouTubers whose content primarily exists off of reacting to modern news with hot takes involves them mostly phoning it in and doing it out of obligation because that's what the audience expects them to do. But I can assure you that this is not the case here with me.
Yeah, those commentary content farms sure do get a lot of stuff wrong in their videos and exaggerate stuff because it makes stuff more dramatic and that's what gets them views. But how are you any different in this video? You made a bunch of assumptions based on like few screenshots and vague descriptions of a game. How the hell are you better than them in this video?
Because the reason I'm making this video is that this is a hot take I feel that I absolutely have to get off my chest. So I'm recording this shortly after some leaks came out about the new Valve game that is yet to be announced but is anticipated to be released sometime soon. The game is apparently going to be called Deadlock, and it's set to be the first new Valve IP in God knows how long, at least 15 years probably. And you know, I personally consider myself a Valve fan. I've sunk countless hours into Valve products over the years and had a lot of fun and really enjoyed the experience. And I appreciate Valve, at least their early work, as being cornerstones of the gaming industry and truly providing some of the greatest works of art in the entire field of video games. And at an earlier time in my life, I feel like I would have been way more excited about this news. But in recent years, the past 5 or 6 years in particular, I, as well as a lot of other people, have become quite jaded over the direction of the video game industry. I've become skeptical of the efficacy of major game studios to put out good products, and even the once spotless, impeccable reputation of a company like Valve has been tarnished for me in the past several years for a variety of factors, primarily relating to the negligence of their already established franchises and player bases, which are still seeking support for their games and just basically being left on radio silence. My overall opinion of Valve as a company has leveled out to the point where I can approach new releases with a sort of eyebrow-raising skepticism.
I do kind of agree with this. It is kind of a dick move to work on a new IP while one of your still very beloved games is filled to the brim with degenerates running bots doing all sorts of weird degenerate shit and ruining games. I know that has been fixed, but I just want to note that this video we're looking at over here was released back when bots were still a thing in TF2.
Enough time has passed at this point since the golden age of Valve.
I know this is a bit off topic, but what the fuck is that 72p looking ass footage?
Where you can no longer really count on each new Valve release being a 10 out of 10 masterpiece like you could maybe 15 years ago.
Like, yeah, but if you went a bit more in time, you would realize that even back then, Valve still didn't release nothing but 10 out of 10 games. They still had stuff like Ricochet, Counter-Strike Condition Zero, Half-Life Source, and Counter-Strike Source, which all flopped, by the way.
A pretty big factor for which being that they've hardly come out with any games over the last decade or so. And what they have come out with, if we're being honest with ourselves, really hasn't been that impactful. They failed to connect audiences in the same way that the company once did in the 2000s. And the reason I bring all this up is to highlight that there's absolutely no momentum behind a new Valve release right now. All the hype and goodwill that something like this could have had has been pretty well burned through at this point from a lack of anything exciting really coming out of the company in the past decade. I'd honestly say that Valve is in sort of a lame duck position right now, where they haven't really had anything going for them in such a long time, and so many other more exciting products have come out and sort of pushed them to the backseat of people's attention in the gaming industry, that whatever they put out next is going to have some juice behind it. It's going to need something to pull people in. Now that the extreme loyalty and brand worship that Valve once had has mostly petered out from such prolonged inaction. And this is all to suggest that if whatever this next game is misses the mark, you can be expected to see Valve's reputation as a company tank in a way that has never been seen in their entire existence. And so when you think about the new game, Deadlock, whatever it ends up actually accomplishing, this is the weight that is going to be placed on its shoulders going in. And ladies and gentlemen, from what I've seen so far of the game, I have to say that the prognosis is not looking good. In fact, from how I've heard these playtesters summarize and describe what the game is like, it honestly sounds like complete garbage to me.
Yeah, just note the fact that he just said that he's just seen stuff and heard stuff. Okay, I'm just describing him like he's a fucking schizophrenic, but basically you get the point. He hasn't actually played the fucking game.
As in an idea that should have been thrown in the dumpster at the pitch meeting, which has somehow evolved into an entire full-fledged project that the company appears to be gambling their entire legacy on for the foreseeable future. So my reactions here are going to be based on the Tyler McVicker video about the new title, where he attempts to aggregate and summarize all the leaked information about this new release. And oh my god, if this description of the game ends up being accurate, we are going to have an absolute dumpster fire on our hands. So, to paraphrase here, McVickers basically describes the game as a cross between Counter-Strike and Overwatch and Valorant and TF2 and Dota and Tower Defense. This is apparently how the closed access beta testers are describing the game.
It looks like Valorant, Overwatch, Dota 2, and TF2 had a baby.
Where did you get Tower Defense and Counter-Strike out of that? Now I'm thinking that he is schizophrenic.
It's apparently just some unholy mixture of every popular esports genre.
Okay, I get Valorant, Dota, and Overwatch, they're popular when it comes to esports, but fucking Bloons Tower Defense 6. I don't think there's a big esports scene for that game, man. I don't know about that one.
Just haphazardly smushed together in some hideous stew of game design. Wow, everyone, you get to play Counter-Strike and Dota and Overwatch all in the same game? Doesn't that sound fun? To me, it sounds completely nauseating. It sounds like some foul mutant abomination that should be taken behind the woodshed and shot. Oh my god, I don't think I've ever conceptually heard of a game whose core concept, the elevator pitch, the slug, the pure description of what the game is, I've never heard something so unappealing. And hopefully, for the sake of my sanity, these beta testers or these leakers or whoever is reporting on this information is mistaken, or they're oversimplifying things, or they're leaving something out. But as it stands now, how this game is being described, just the thought of it is making me physically nauseous. And if Valve releases this thing as it's currently being described, I am foreseeing a total embarrassment. And to some of you, this may sound completely ridiculous. Like, how can I judge a game that hasn't even been officially announced yet?
Because you're terminally online.
At the time for recording this audio, how could I possibly be so unfair as to write off a game before it's even been announced? And to be honest, I can't offer you a sound explanation as to how what I'm saying is reasonable at all. But the best I can say is describe this whole thing as a matter of intuition. And this is something the past several years I've been trying to learn how to do, to listen to my intuition more. And let me tell you something. The very instant I heard people describe this game as a mix between Counter-Strike and Overwatch and Dota and TF2, the alarm bells immediately went off in my head. I had never been more repulsed by a single description of a game. And this is all without a single ounce of thought dedicated to the idea. It was an immediate, automatic, rushing feeling of dread.
If your immediate response is to feel dread because a game was vaguely described as something you don't like, then I'm pretty sure you should seek out professional help. Imagine this guy hearing the Valve is making a fucking battle royale. I'm pretty sure he would just have a fucking stroke on the spot.
Just the most tremendous gut feeling that this thing is going to be a disaster. Just what a hideously awful idea from the very onset. Mixing Counter-Strike and Overwatch and Dota and TF2 to form some ungodly spawn state that's just begging to be euthanized. It sounds like something a 4-year-old would come up with, who has no understanding of how anything works or how any aspects of design are actually supposed to work. It's just to say, oh boy, I sure do love pizza and burgers and sushi and tacos. Those are all really great, delicious things, so I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna mix them all into a giant mushy soup. Just blend it all together without a care in the world. And surely, since the initial distinct things you put in are all tasty and well-liked, the final product is gonna end up more delicious than any of them. Like, does no one else see a problem with just haphazardly mixing together a bunch of totally disparate things that are each completely distinct from one another, and the reasons why they are good and they work are completely different from each other? Do you not see how just mushing them all together into one unrecognizable conglomerate may not be the best idea?
And this right here is why you don't jump to conclusions. Like, it's alright to be wrong sometimes, but it still doesn't change the fact that you sound really fucking stupid.
Not to mention the fact that each of these games have completely different player bases, which each enjoy completely different aspects of the first-person shooter and or MOBA experience. In fact, each of the games listed as the ingredients for whatever this unholy abomination Deadlock title is, they tend to command such distinct player bases that the fan bases of each of these titles are basically mutually exclusive, meaning that if you try to map out a Venn diagram of the CSGO player base and the Dota 2 player base, you would basically have two circles that are not even touching. There is very, very little crossover between these games, if any. People who like the realistic and gritty shooting mechanics of Counter-Strike are not going to like Dota magical super particle effect fantasy world. This is just something so simple, I don't even think it needs to be explained. And personally speaking, I consider myself a fan of the TF2 flavor of Valve shooters. And I tried playing CSGO, and I didn't really like it. And I tried playing Dota, and I really didn't like it. If I happen to be a fan of TF2 specifically, why would I want to...
Having that TF2 footage in the background while saying that you like TF2 just makes me think that you should never be taken seriously. I am hoping that I will have custom decals turned off if I ever run into this man on a TF2 server.
play a game where it's TF2 mixed with CSGO and Dota. Are the TF2E aspects supposed to be some kind of sweetener to get me through the door? Just to end up playing something that is completely antithetical to the gameplay of TF2?
TF2 and Deadlock are two completely different games, and you would have known that if you had played the fucking game.
And again, I'd understand you could probably rightfully call this rant an overreaction if it was just kind of hearsay, but there are leaked screenshots from the game that look quite legitimate, and at this point, for the sake of argument, let's just assume they're real. And one of the screenshots clearly shows the minimap having lanes like in Dota and League of Legends, and my immediate reaction on seeing that is just, ugh.
Again, if you just don't like a game and that's your first response to you seeing it, go seek professional help.
Oh my god, lanes, dude. You're trying to sell me this game being like TF2, class-based shooter, and you're putting in lanes? How disgusting.
Excuse me, who's trying to sell this game as being like TF2 to you? Do you have some kind of memory loss? You yourself earlier said that you were going off of Tyler McVicker's attempt to aggregate different descriptions of different beta playtesters. No one is trying to sell this game to you like it's TF2. Like, it's alright, we're all sometimes wrong, but you went from being wrong to lying.
And look, I understand there are people out there probably watching this who enjoy MOBAs, and this is just my personal preference. But did Valve ever think to look at their player base and the specific types of people who enjoy the specific IPs they have? Did they not ask themselves, who the hell actually wants this? A hero shooter where I have to pick a lane and probably go jungling and get gold. It just sounds like such trash. Oh my god. Whenever I'm playing TF2, which is not much anymore because they let the game go to complete shit, the first thing I'm always thinking about whenever I'm rocket jumping around as a soldier is, what if this game was just more like League of Legends? I don't think I could ever conceive of something so putrid. Yet here we are. Apparently this is going to be Valve's new title. This incestuous MOBA shooter hybrid abomination, which is probably realistically going to most closely resemble Overwatch. And again, what an absolute insult to the Valve loyalists out there. We already have a superior class-based shooter to Overwatch, and that's TF2. And you basically let that go down the toilet through complete negligence, and then you're just going to come out with this. A hero shooter 5 years after Overwatch and the entire hero shooter genre already became irrelevant and unpopular. Let's be honest, folks. I understand the meme of Valve time, but this is ridiculous. I'm pretty confident that most of the gaming consumer base at this point has already moved on from the hero shooter genre. Most people have already deduced that mixing shooter elements with a MOBA doesn't really work. There are way too many contrasting and anti-synergistic game design components that make these types of games practically impossible to balance correctly. And yes, these games still have dedicated player bases. Just like I'm sure Imagine Dragons has a very dedicated fan base, but the rest of the general consumer has started to view these things as a bunch of gimmicky crap. And for Valve to basically be coming out with their own version of this 8 years after the genre was actually at the peak of its popularity, it comes off as very backwards and out of touch. And it doesn't feel Valve-like in that regard, or at least the reputation that Valve once had, as constantly being on the cutting edge of new ideas and new technology. All right, everyone, step right up. Let's gather around. Let's get excited for this new Valve game. All right, what is it? It's a hero shooter. Really? In 2024? I think this game will come out in 2025, but really, you're expecting people to be excited about a new hero shooter in 2024. Hey Valve, if you're taking such bright ideas, I have an idea. Why don't you come out with a 100-player battle royale mode? Because that idea clearly hasn't been done to death yet. Wow, another hero shooter. How exciting. But hey, don't worry about it. Valve makes good games. I'm sure this game's gonna be good. I'm sure it's gonna be less of a dumpster fire than Overwatch, at least. And it's really strange to me how so much of the gaming community at this point still has this prevailing belief that Valve still makes these super polished, flawless products. Because if you look at the last 3 titles that Valve has officially come out with, one of them has been underwhelming, and one of them has been a complete catastrophic disaster. So for people out there thinking, oh, how can Valve possibly screw up a game? We've already seen it happen.
I feel like back when this video was released, this was one of the few actually good takes he has. Yeah, you can be pretty skeptical considering Valve's previous flops, but he just ignores Half-Life Alyx. Imagine if I would say that TF2 was going to be a bad game, because Valve doesn't know how to make games anymore because of Counter-Strike Source and Half-Life Source, but I actively ignore Half-Life 2. Like, they are obviously capable of making good games. Sometimes they flop, sometimes they're good. And as I said earlier, even the older Valve ended up releasing a lot of flops.
Counter-Strike 2 has been frequently cited as a worse experience than Counter-Strike 1, and it's completely filled and infested with hackers. So yeah, to all you CS players out there having a bad time with hackers, as a TF2 fan, I can sincerely say, get used to it, because Valve has probably moved on from your game and gotten your money, and you finally reached the stage where your game has gotten old enough to where Valve is going to have you falsely hold out for some salvation that's never coming. So while I can certainly sympathize with the newfound plight of the CS player, the best consolation for them I can come up with is telling them to get used to the negligence and mismanagement. Because this is how it's been in the TF2 space for, the last 7 years. Don't let the 2 next to the title fool you. You guys are not the new toy anymore. This new, wonderful hero shooter is. So you guys better enjoy getting locked away in the toy chest, just like we have for the past almost decade.
Okay, this isn't necessarily like some kind of fact, I just want to get my opinion out. As someone who's played TF2 and seen all sorts of different people in the community, I don't think he's sorry. I don't think he feels sympathy for CSGO players. I think he's one of those players that hates CSGO or hated CSGO because Valve was paying more attention to it and he just blamed that for TF2 not getting any updates. But now he went from blaming CSGO to blaming Deadlock.
But anyway, butthurt TF2 rant aside.
I fucking knew it.
It appears that the launch of CS2 has not been very popular among fans, but that pales in comparison to what is truly one of the biggest catastrophic failures in the entire gaming industry in the past 10 years, and that is the launch and immediate death of Artifact, a game that at this point has been pretty much memory hold out of existence, and one that you're not really supposed to talk about or acknowledge ever happened. But when it comes to the case of, assessing the efficacy of Valve of actually being able to release high-profile games, I think that the case of Artifact bears repeating. A game that was met with immediate, sour disappointment the moment it was revealed, and one that within months of release collapsed to a concurrent player count so low that I would not be surprised if it has been subsequently delisted from the Steam store. This was a brand new Valve game, everyone, at a time when people had a much higher opinion about Valve than they do right now even. It came out at a time when there was still a great deal of hype and consumer goodwill towards Valve, and just look at what happened. And that was just a card game, a genre which is undoubtedly popular, and a gameplay format that at the very least doesn't sound conceptually stupid. I mean, it's not like they came out with a card game mixed with Mario Kart and Smash Bros. It was just a straightforward card game, and look what happened. So do you really think a game that people are calling a mix between CSGO and Dota and tower defense is not going to meet the same fate? And again, it's worth mentioning that Artifact, Valve's most catastrophic failure as a company, happened to fall within the shadow of a more popular Blizzard product. And you gotta imagine that this new hero shooter combined with mobile elements is going to be most closely compared to Overwatch. And while in the case of Artifact, its rival competitor Hearthstone was actually growing and maintaining the popularity of its genre, Overwatch has pretty much already tainted this genre as a joke for so many people. So much of the gaming consumer base at this point considers the pseudo MOBA first-person, third-person shooter genre to be a joke, largely due to the downward spiral of Overwatch. And so if you're Valve, you're trying to enter this market that the consumer has already written off as passé at best, and really as more people see it, a frustrating, unfun game type riddled with mechanics that don't make sense design-wise. That's the slice of the market you're trying to corner as Valve. Does this whole thing not sound just as idiotic to the rest of you? And to repeat an earlier point, this doesn't feel like Valve, at least not the Valve that I grew up with in the 2000s. Because when I think of Valve as a company, I don't associate them with bland, generic, competitive gaming clusterfucks. Although maybe that's what many people do now, because that's largely how the direction has been defined in the 2010s. But back when they made actual, new, original titles that pushed the needle and progressed the arts of video games forward, I tend to think of well-written, atmospheric games with great art direction and cool physics systems. The classic lineup of Half-Life, Portal, Left 4 Dead. This is pretty much the essence of Valve for me. Not whatever stupid shit they're doing now with competitive gaming and esports and loot cases and selling gambling to children. Although maybe at this point I must admit that my view of the company is outdated, and this is what they are now. Sweaty, frustrating, unwatchable competitive games with gambling, loot boxes, and item economies that they take a 15% cut out of. And that is realistically what this new game is going to be. Except
even more stupid conceptually. And visually, looking at these supposed leaked screenshots, the game looks completely generic. There's nothing aesthetically unique about it. There's nothing about it that screams Valve. Whereas you can take any screenshot from Portal or Half-Life or Left 4 Dead and immediately tell it's in the source engine and that it's under Valve's art direction. Whatever this game is, doesn't look like any of that. It kind of just looks like Overwatch, maybe even closer to Paladins. So the art direction, already, from the onset, looks completely mediocre.
Oh, cry me a fucking river. Boo-hoo, a game does not have an art style that you specifically like. I don't fucking give a shit. And the game really looks nothing like Overwatch or Paladins, and I think that's a good thing, because you'll probably feel sick again and I would probably have to call an ambulance for you.
What about the writing? We don't have any details for that yet, but I have a pretty strong feeling that the writing is going to be just as lame and generic as pretty much any other game that's come out in the last 10 years.
I feel like there are a few characters with annoying dialogue, to be honest, especially the green jello guy. Not only does he have annoying dialogue, but they put this annoying voice filter over the voice actor's lines. And instead of sounding funny and quirky, it just sounds fucking annoying. And it sounds twice as annoying for me because it's giving me Postal 2 Corkscrew Rules flashbacks.
Protoplasm. Strangers would feel so good.
What's the holy fuck? Strings? Where's my dick?
Damn, I knew I should go easy on jerking off.
Oh, but Valve games have such great writing and world building. Yeah, maybe back when they used to actually employ talented writers, people who were let go from the company 10 years ago. And trust me, as someone who's been waiting for TF2 Comics number 7 to come out for the last 10 years, it fills me with a special feeling knowing that the guy they hired to write them no longer works at the company anymore. At least I'm pretty sure that's the case. So you think this game is actually going to have good writing? From what writers? Because the people who did the best writing at Valve haven't worked there for pretty much the past decade. So no, when it comes to the prospect of this game having writing that's not a bunch of generic hero fantasy crap, fresh out of Overwatch and League of Legends, I guess I'll believe it when I see it. But when this garbage eventually comes out and flops horribly, I don't want to see anyone comparing it to the brilliant subtle art direction and writing of TF2. So that's my totally unfair and unreasonable rant against this game that hasn't even been officially announced. And who knows, I might be completely proven wrong, and you can all go back to this video in 2 years when this game is a tremendous, rousing success and has surpassed CSGO and TF2 and Dota 2 and Overwatch and successfully unified all 4 of these completely different franchise fan bases. Maybe it's gonna happen, and this game is not gonna be some horrible mission, it's just gonna be like the Avatar of gaming, finally bringing balance and harmony to all the different disciplines of shooters and MOBAs or whatever. But to me, right now, it all just sounds like a bunch of junk. Valve is about to come out with a game that is gonna provide players with nothing but junk. And I really think there's a high chance that by the end of the decade, none of us are going to be looking at Valve in the same way because of whatever this monstrosity is that they're about to unleash on the market.
So what was this game in the end? Well, this game was in the end just a third-person hero shooter that's also a MOBA. That's it. The game is not that bad. I'm not really that big of a fan of MOBAs, and I myself kinda had fun playing this game. Not the best thing ever, but I think it's an alright game. I really don't see that many connections between this and Overwatch or Valorant or TF2, especially not fucking Bloons Tower Defense 6. Personally, my biggest issue with Deadlock has to be the character designs. None of them really reflect the purpose of the characters in my opinion. There is a sandbox mode where you can kinda take your characters for a test drive, I guess, and there are short descriptions of characters, but it was still kinda confusing trying to learn any of the characters, at least for me. As I said at the start of the video, do not send any hate to this guy, I don't hate him. This video was just made to entertain both you the viewers and myself.